"If you value your life, leave here within half an hour," snarled the British governor, shredding Wide Eyes' peace belts in a fit of rage. This Delaware leader's bold mission for truce during the Revolution backfired spectacularly, highlighting the raw betrayal that doomed native diplomats. Little Carpenter fared no better, trekking hundreds of miles through wilderness to beg for Cherokee mercy after Fort George horrors. It was the era's ultimate irony. Warriors turned peacemakers, only to have their words weaponized against them in a storm of colonial deceit and tribal division. Mid-18th century North America simmered with alliances that shifted like sand underfoot, where European powers dragged native nations into their squabbles over land no one fully controlled. The Cherokee, under leaders like Attakullakulla, known as Little Carpenter for his skill in building diplomatic bridges, sought stability through treaties with the British. Since 1730, they had maintained a fragile friendship, supplying warriors to fight alongside English forces against the French. Yet, internal rifts grew, with a war party led by Ostinaco, or the Great Warrior, pushing for confrontation. Little Carpenter navigated these divides, advocating restraint even as French agents whispered promises of better trade and respect. Think of it as colonial networking, where one wrong alliance could cost entire villages their future, and loyalty often came with a side of betrayal. Tensions boiled over just before the full eruption of the French and Indian War. Cherokee warriors returning from aiding the British in Ohio fell victim to Virginia settlers who mistook them for enemies, or perhaps didn't care to distinguish. The massacre sent shockwaves through Cherokee councils, turning deliberations into shouts for blood. Little Carpenter, amid the fury, shielded British agents from immediate retaliation, insisting on honoring hospitality laws. This act preserved a thin thread of dialogue, but it highlighted the irony. The British offered bounties for Indian scalps after their own defeats, like Braddock's rout, fueling the very violence they claimed to abhor. Councils fractured, with French envoys exploiting the anger to sway opinions, while British promises of goods rang hollow against fresh graves. Across the rivers, the Delaware or Lenape faced their own erosion of power. Once dominant in the Algonquin family, controlling valleys from Delaware to Schuylkill, they had been subdued by the Iroquois League, who demeaned them as women and forbade independent land sales. By mid-century, many Delaware migrated west to the Susquehanna and beyond, absorbing Quaker teachings of nonviolence from William Penn and Moravian missionaries like Count Zinzendorf. Yet, peace proved elusive amid encroachments. White Eyes, leader of the Turtle Clan in Ohio, emerged as a beacon of integrity, living simply and prioritizing his people's survival over vengeance. His counterpart, Captain Pipe, favored war, splitting the nation into factions where every council risked bloodshed. White Eyes' patriotism showed in quiet acts, like negotiating neutrality, but the pressures mounted as European wars pulled at old wounds. The crisis peaked with Little Carpenter's measured response to the Virginia killings. He channeled the council's rage into a declaration: war must come, but not against guests under their roof. "Let us make war at once," he urged, "and never bury the hatchet till our countrymen have been avenged." Still, he protected the British envoys, sending them away with wampum belts intact, a move that bought time but earned him accusations of weakness. This restraint underscored the era's bitter joke. Native leaders balanced honor against survival, while colonists viewed treaties as temporary conveniences, discarded when inconvenient. At Fort Prince George, the standoff turned lethal. Captain Codymore, despised for his harsh treatment of Cherokee hostages held as leverage, faced a siege from warriors seeking justice. The Great Warrior lured Codymore outside under pretense of parley only to strike him down and wound his aides. In retaliation, the garrison slaughtered every hostage inside, men connected to prominent Cherokee families. The killings ignited a firestorm, driving even moderates toward unrelenting war, as bodies piled up in a cycle where each side's justice fed the other's fury. It was like a colonial version of escalating tweets, except the replies came in ambushes and sieges. As the American Revolution unfolded, White Eyes pushed for Delaware neutrality, recognizing that neither British nor American victors would make reliable neighbors. Both sides courted support or at least non-interference, but White Eyes saw through the flattery, arguing that aligning with either risked annihilation. Captain Pipe, meanwhile, rallied for conflict, deepening the tribal divide. White Eyes' stance required constant vigilance, dodging plots from within his own ranks, where loyalty shifted with rumors of land grabs and broken promises. White Eyes' defiance shone in Pittsburgh, confronting Seneca allies of the British. Mocked as subordinates by the Iroquois, who reminded them of their women's status, White Eyes retorted sharply, "Look at me. Am I not a full-grown man? Am I not in the dress of a warrior?" Gesturing toward the Allegheny, he claimed it all as his domain, a bold assertion that silenced critics but stirred fears of reprisal among his followers. His peace messages to other tribes met rejection. A British governor tore the wampum belts to shreds, threatening his life if he didn't flee. Assassination attempts from Pipe's allies followed, turning every path into a potential trap, yet White Eyes persisted, embodying the futility of diplomacy in a world bent on conquest. War dragged on, carving paths of destruction through Cherokee lands, where villages burned and families scattered like leaves in a gale. The toll mounted, with warriors falling to British raids and supplies dwindling under blockades, forcing even the fiercest to reckon with extinction. Little Carpenter watched as the great warrior clung to resistance, but the council shifted, acknowledging that continued fighting invited total erasure. A delegation formed, 20 chiefs strong, led by Little Carpenter to Fort Prince George, where they approached under white flags, not hatchets. This pivot marked the era's grim calculus. Survival demanded swallowing pride, negotiating terms that favored the victors, much like a bad trade deal in a market rigged from the start. At the fort, the British colonel received them with calculated formality, acknowledging Little Carpenter as the voice of the Cherokee nation. The chief spoke plainly, handing over wampum belts as symbols of intent. "You live at the water and are in light. We are in darkness. But hope that all will yet be clear," he said, framing his exhaustion from ceaseless mediation. He invoked a shared creator, insisting paths should remain open for all in one land, urging love as one people. The belts carried prayers for unity, a ritual as old as the hills, yet in this moment, they felt like fragile bids in a high-stakes auction where the Cherokee held the weakest hand. Think of it as 18th century crowdfunding for peace. Except failure meant more raids, not just empty pockets. Negotiations hit a wall when the colonel demanded surrender of 4 notorious Cherokee warriors for public execution, a condition meant to humiliate and deter. Little Carpenter listened, then sealed his lips and shook his head, refusing to betray kin for a treaty. The colonel pressed, suggesting reflection overnight, but the chief held firm. "I gave it yesterday." This standoff revealed the power imbalance, where British mercy came laced with vengeance, forcing native leaders to weigh collective survival against individual honor. In the end, the colonel relented enough to allow Little Carpenter's journey to Charleston, a concession that bought time but underscored how peace often required endless concessions from the defeated. The trek to Charleston spanned hundreds of miles through untamed wilderness, a gauntlet of rivers, forests, and potential ambushes, testing the delegation's resolve. Upon arrival, the governor, versed in frontier politics, recognized Little Carpenter as an honorable figure, the finest of his kind. He granted the plea, likely waiving the executions, sealing a truce that halted immediate hostilities. Little Carpenter then requested Captain John Stewart as Indian agent, citing universal trust in the man. "All the Indians love him, and none of us will ever feel uneasiness while he is with us." The governor agreed, and Little Carpenter returned home, having stitched a temporary peace from threads of desperation, a patch on a fraying blanket that history would soon tear anew. Early 1778 brought whispers from Tory exiles in Pittsburgh, claiming American forces massed to slaughter natives, igniting panic among the Delaware like a spark in dry grass. Villages buzzed with fear, warriors sharpening tomahawks as rumors painted revolutionaries as butchers. White Eyes struggled to douse the flames, his calls for calm drowned by shouts for action. It was revolutionary fake news at its finest, spread without fact checks, turning neutral tribes into potential foes overnight, much like modern misinformation campaigns that spiral from whispers to wars. White Eyes convened a council, labeling the tales as fabrications and demanding a 10-day pause to verify truths. Captain Pipe countered with his own assembly, declaring dissenters as national enemies, rallying for arms against the Americans. White Eyes responded with resolve, "I have done what I could for peace. If you choose to believe these lying vagabonds, you shall not go without me, and I shall not follow. I shall place myself at your head, and none shall fight harder than I. I shall be the first to fall, for I do not wish to survive my nation. I will not live to mourn the destruction of a people who deserved a better fate." His words landed like a thunderclap, swaying the assembly to wait, a momentary victory in a sea of suspicion where leadership meant risking one's neck daily. Tensions escalated as Pipe's allies plotted Wide Eyes' removal, whispers of assassination threading through the camps. Then, Moravian missionary John Heckewelder arrived, a timely intervention. Wide Eyes feigned distrust, refusing a handshake to mislead spies, then grilled him on the rumors. American defeats, Washington's death, Congress dissolved, British dominance. Heckewelder denied it all, producing a newspaper detailing Burgoyne's surrender and friendly American messages. This evidence shifted the tide, exposing the lies like pulling back a curtain on a rigged stage, where colonial powers played natives as pawns in their independence game. The warriors accepted Heckewelder's proofs, and Wide Eyes seized the momentum, welcoming him publicly. "You are welcome, my brother." Pipe fell silent, his agents confirming the truths, marking a diplomatic coup that preserved neutrality. Wide Eyes dispatched envoys to the Shawnee, countering Tory agitators. In winter 1779-1780, he visited Pittsburgh, consulting Indian agents and joining General McIntosh to fortify protections for neutral tribes. Tragically, smallpox claimed him en route, his death rippling sorrow through Delaware and allied nations. Pipe ascended, aligning with the British, unraveling Wide Eyes' fragile weave in a single, silent passing. Little Carpenter stitched fragile truces from bloodied threads, while Wide Eyes' words crumbled under rumors and disease. Both chiefs chased peace through Betrayal's storm, only to see their nations dragged deeper into colonial gears. History whispers that desperate pleas rarely outlast the hatchets they bury, a reminder that alliances built on sand wash away with the first raid. Subscribe to Native Legends and History Stories for more unflinching tales. Like and comment your thoughts below.